Halftime show. Terry Ford, and David Dare, as we hang here till 3 on the game. Thanks for hanging with us. I popped a mint a little while ago, and haven't finished it yet, so I apologize for my mint. Anyway, nothing much this weekend. Kind of a boring weekend, no sports. Fantastic. It was, if you're a sports junkie, a sports dork, a sports wager, a sports talk show host, just a sports fan, that was a weekend, man. Last night, I will give Notre Dame props for hanging in, sticking in, not giving up, kept the fight going, because that thing could have been 128-7, right? Ohio State was just cooking. Notre Dame had no answers. And before you know it, it's 31-7. And I was kidding with Tyler because Tyler was doing the morning show and Tyler grabs all of our audio. And I was like, hey, bud, wrap up your audio and go to bed. This thing's over. And, Ohio State was doing, it felt like what they wanted to do, right? That's the way that game was going. And so I give Notre Dame props for continuing to grind, fighting their way back in that football game, and making it a one-possession contest at the end. But maybe it was just me. But even when Ohio State's sitting at 3rd and 11 late in the contest, and this was like, the biggest play of the game at that point, to where Notre Dame, if they get to stop, they get the ball back. I still was like, Ohio State's going to win. I don't know how, but they're not going to blow this lead. They're going to they will figure it out and win the championship. I didn't text my buddy going, hey, it's 3rd and 11. They're going to throw a deep ball to Jeremiah Smith to seal the deal. Yeah. But I just figured Ohio State was going to find a way to hang in there and hold on and win. Because they're just, and I picked them to win the game like 99% of the world. There's better. Again, I give Notre Dame so much credit for putting that fight in to cut it to 31-23. Now, no one's going to admit it, but did Ohio State kind of mentally take their foot off the gas? I don't know. Maybe. You're up 31-7. It's easy to say, keep grinding, keep going, pretend it's nothing. That's easy to say, but you see the scoreboard is 31-7, and you're, roughly a quarter and a half away from being a national champion. And the Notre Dame offense after the opening drive has done nothing. 0 zip nada, nothing. It's hard not to mentally maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit. And then but when you do that, sometimes it's tough to get your foot back on the old mental gas pedal. Because, again, you've kind of started to coast in neutral a little bit because you figured this thing's over. And all of a sudden it's not over because the other team won't cooperate and they keep trying. How annoying is that? But I just never thought Ohio State was in trouble, even when it was 31-23. And the Buckeyes are facing a 3rd and 11. I figured, okay, if you got a punt, the defense will figure it out and make a stop. But Notre Dame, they dug in the guts and got that thing down to a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and I give them a ton of credit. And Ohio State was interesting, listening to the players. We'll get into this in a little bit, talking post-game. I get why the post-game folks ask questions the way they do. We've talked about it on the show. It's sound bites. Everybody wants a sound bite. So, you won the national championship. How do you feel? Like crap. Why? I bet it on Notre Dame. What are you going to get? The question is always built for the soundbite. How do you feel? What's running through your mind? What does this moment mean to you? All those questions are just to create sound bites. That's all. But there was a couple interesting questions that were asked that we'll get to here in just a little bit, especially the Ohio State guys. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. Because my whole thought, here's what I'm interested in the post game. I would like someone, player, coach, whoever, with the Buckeyes, just, okay, what were the conversations like after the Michigan game? At what point did you push that Michigan thing behind you, flush it, and move forward? What light bulb, what turned the light bulb on coming off of that awful, awful loss to Michigan? A team you should have beat by 3 touchdowns. There was one answer I liked, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. Next segment, matter of fact. But back to the game. I mean, first of all, I get Notre Dame. We play man-to-man defense. Notre Dame played man-to-man about 56% of the time through the season. I get it. That's who you are. That's who we are. That's what we do. That's, we're dictating to you what we do. You're not dictating to us to have to change what we do. I understand all that. Until you go up against an Avenger. You go up against, give it any cliche, a one of one, a unicorn, or whatever the hell you want to call Jeremiah Smith. He's better than you. He's better than your guys. He just is. If you're going to go out there and play Jeremiah Smith man up, one-on-one, you're going to get beat. You're going to get burned. You're going to pay. And Notre Dame did. I just don't... I don't get that mindset. I'm sure Al Golden, defensive coordinator, would give us 10 reasons why they would go man. And we go, okay, didn't think of 7 of those. That's why you're the coach and I'm just a sports talk goof. Thank you. But just in the theory of that guy is better than your guy, what are you doing? What are you doing? He can beat you. He's a game wrecker. He's a game changer. He's a game ender. Why would you leave a corner on him with no help? And the corner didn't even drop any bump and run. Didn't get in his grill. Didn't get their hands on Smith off the line of scrimmage. Gave him a free release. That guy got a free release and you're blitzing. Why wouldn't you do something to jam him up, if nothing else, to bust the timing of everything while you're blitzing and maybe you get a sack? I don't know. Call me crazy. Mine who was sweating. Sends me text messages for like a half an hour. Man, I can't believe this. It's an 8-point game. It's an 8-point game. Oh, my God, it's an 8-point game. Because, again, the number was 8. I think he took it at 8.5. So he was like, he was a little nervous. And he didn't tell me how much money, but, it wasn't $10. It wasn't like buying a few scratch-off lottery tickets. Just saying. So we're going back and forth at the end, and finally, Ohio State kicks the field goal to go up 11, and, he could go change his pants. But that was really that was it after Smith's catch. That was the only suspense left. So I don't understand the mindset of that. I just don't. There are certain players where you do have to change up who you are and what you do because they're just better than your guys. That and is better than urines, is the way my Uncle Virgil would say it. Well, right there, he's better than urines. And I just didn't think that was... I didn't think the coaching staff put their secondary in a position to succeed in that situation. I just didn't. So that was the thing last night I didn't understand. And there's a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there is a certain amount of people who are criticizing Marcus Freeman for kicking or attempting the field goal on 4th and 9 and not going for a touchdown down by 16. Freeman, he explained it in the post game. Hey, we kicked the field goal. We're down 13. Yeah, we're still down 2 scores, but it's easier to navigate scoring 13 down the stretch than it is to get to 16. Because the 16, you got to get 2 touchdowns, 2 2-point conversions. The 13, you score, kick the extra point. Then if you could score again and kick the extra point, now you have the lead. I get where Freeman's going. And for me, I understand getting 4th and 9 is not easy on Ohio State. Hell, getting 4th and 1 at the goal line isn't easy on Ohio State. And you're trying to get 4th and goal from the 9. And you don't have what you call a prolific pass offense, even though, to the credit of Notre Dame, the passing offense, they got it going in the second half. But it's not an elite passing team. So you're 4th and 9. Their defense has stuffed people inside the 10 multiple times this year on 4th down. Throwing the football isn't really your wheelhouse, usually. I get Freeman's thought process. And he said if it was closer, like if it was 4th and 5, go for it. Absolutely go for it. If you'd have kicked a field goal on 4th down from the 5, then I'm piling on. I think that was a tough call. If you ask me what I would have probably done, I guess because I'm down by 2 scores, I still have plenty of time. And if I do get stopped, Ohio State's a prolific offense, but I have shut them down, a little bit, forced a fumble. So maybe I got a little momentum. Maybe I go for it. And if I don't get it, they're 91 yards away. But again, to me, it's not as clear-cut as people are trying to make it because it's 4th and 9. But, that was the thing. I don't think that's why Notre Dame lost. I don't. Just ready? I know it's simple. Ohio State was better. After Notre Dame's first drive, it was all Ohio State. So we'll talk more about the national championship game last night, dig into a little more of the minutia of what happened as the Ohio State Buckeyes beat Notre Dame 34-23 to capture the national championship. Get you some sound from all the folks involved in this thing. Also, that is up next. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, David Ayers hanging out here as we freeze our buns off up until 3 here on the game. We talk about the nest on Gadsden and the Vista all the time. We talk about how if you want to redo some stuff, it's a new year, it's 2025. How about a new kitchen? How about some new appliances? How about a new tub, new lighting, new fixtures, new plumbing? Well, it's very simple. You start the whole thing off by calling 803-978-2025. That is the number for the nest. You call and say, look, let's say I want to get some new appliances for my kitchen. Hold on, we're going to put you in touch with our expert, Graham. Then their expert, Graham, who's been doing this a long time, will ask you some questions. What's your vision? What are you looking for? What's your budget? And they'll set you up an appointment to come on in. And then they will walk you through the vast showroom that is the Nest and show you all your different choices. They'll sit down, come up with a plan that, again, will fit your vision and your budget. It's the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista, 803-978-2025. Give them a ring at the Nest. Halftime show, Terry Ford, David Dare. We're just hanging here doing the halftime show. David Dare, Terry Ford here on the game. 803-404-6100. Talking national championship, which went down last night. As Ohio State takes out Notre Dame 34-23. Again, Ohio State winning does not surprise me. Ohio State winning by 11 doesn't surprise me. I think I picked them by 10 in our little Gamecock Central deal. But the fact that Notre Dame came back and made it a contest, I give them props. I do. And we've talked about that here on the show. And the one thing that I do want to get into before we knock off some sound is I was interested in some post-game, not just the, hey, how do you feel? Hey, what's running through your mind right now? Hey, are you happy? I wanted to hear someone give an answer to the question, what clicked in? What happened after that loss to Michigan? Let's be real, that embarrassing loss to Michigan. What went on? What went down? How did you guys get the right mindset to, get your head on straight, put that Michigan loss behind you, and move forward? What was going on? How did you handle it? Because we all thought they're done. They're absolutely done. There's no way Ohio State is going to get themselves back together after that loss. They looked like they were toast. They really did. And so it was like, all right, what changed? What was different? And I forget which player it was. Went into, he was asked a question. And basically he was like, look, after the game, yeah, we had to, our head wasn't on what you call straight. And everybody was still kind of walking around in a daze, in a fog, after a very difficult loss in a game they should have won. And so finally, the way this thing went down is everybody's just kind of sitting around trying to figure it all out. And then the conversation starts about, getting it back together, getting yourself where you need to be mentally. But it truly locked in, again, according to this player, when one of their veterans, Lathan Ransom, the safety, who I think has been at Ohio State for 10 years, Ransom got up in front of the team and was like, okay, enough. We got to start carrying ourselves like champions because we can be champions. So enough of this. Michigan game's over. We don't want Michigan to beat us twice. We don't want Michigan to beat us against Michigan and Michigan to beat us against Tennessee. We got to carry ourselves like champions and start thinking like champions because we can win this thing. And that was the beginning of the turn, according to this player, and I can't remember which player I heard talk about this. And I was like, okay, that's kind of what I wanted to hear, or one of the things I wanted to hear. Because it was a lot of generalities by the players, like, well, we knew we only had us, and we had to get together because we were one, and all that other stuff. And I get all the cliches. And the cliches aren't false, just what triggered everything. What finally got you out of your own head to where you could, move forward. And when Ransom got up and spoke to the team, that was the true push to get the Michigan stink out of the what they call the Woody, and move forward now knowing that, first of all, you're not playing Michigan. And you can go maybe bag a national championship if you play to your level, because that's the most talented roster in America. A lot of people picked Ohio State to win it all this year. So they got it going. Now, the thing that makes me laugh, there are a very small percentage of Ohio State football fans who are still going to be annoyed because the Buckeyes lost to the Wolverines, even though their favorite team won the national championship. There's still a part of them that's going to be annoyed about this season because they lost to Michigan. Me, I'd be like, who cares? Won the national championship. It's all right. We'll get them next year. But there is a small percentage of that fan base who they'd rather beat Michigan than win a national championship. As nutty as that sounds. I know I lived in Ohio for 2 years. I met some of those people. But Lathan Ransom is really the one that got it going, their veteran safety. By saying, okay, well, enough of this. All right, the Michigan game's over. We're in the college football playoff. Enough. And sometimes you need that. You ever had that in life where you're moping around some girl dumped you or some guy dumped you or whatever, and you're all, and finally you have that friend that's not afraid to give you that smack in the head, so to speak. All right, enough. Quit moping around. Quit being a bleep. And it helps get you out of your funk. And that's what Ransom did to his teammates. According to the one player, just got up, had the speech, said we got to start carrying ourselves like champions because we can be champions, but we got to start believing. And we got to get ourselves right in the head. So Notre Dame getting the beating from that last night, especially when you're down 31-7. We'll get back in here in case you woke up and missed some of the quotes and comments from the folks involved. We'll get to that next, as we'll hear from a bunch of different people in this game. We'll get to. That's coming up. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford's here. David Ayer's here. We're going till 3 here on the game.
toughest postseason climb in the history of the sport. And after all that, it's Ohio State together at the mountaintop, champions of college football.
There is the call with the TV crew on the win for Ohio State over Notre Dame last night, national championship game. Terry Ford, glad you could hang out with us in the halftime show. David Ayers here as we go up until 3 o'clock here on the game. All right, so you hear the final call. And post-game, obviously two different reactions from the head coaches. We'll start with Ryan Day, cut 29. Dave, Ryan Day on his team's journey to this national championship.
That, God made it hard for a reason. And, you just never know what's in your path along the way. But this game can give you the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. It can take you to your knees some days as a player and as a coach. And I've been there before. And, for all those coaches or people who, are, on a journey to what they're looking to accomplish, if you're trying to achieve greatness, if you're trying to become national champs in the most competitive environment there is in the entire world. I mean, there's nothing more competitive than college football, in my opinion. And it's going to be hard. And there's going to be things you'll learn along the way. But if you surround yourself with great people, you're resilient, and you believe in the guys around you, and you just keep fighting and keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you give yourself another chance. And that's really what it was. And you think, back we were in the stadium last time, and, I couldn't quite come to grips for a while with, why we just didn't quite finish that game against Georgia. But I understand now. It all makes sense. And here we are, and I couldn't feel better.
Okay. There's Ryan Day post-game. And I guess it's like, well, I couldn't understand why we couldn't finish that game against Georgia. Because remember, they had Georgia beat a few years ago. And they couldn't finish the deal. And is that leading you to this point? I mean, sure, it's part of your journey. Is that, put that in the mental, the mental bank, so to speak, to give you the extra whatever you need to get to this point? Sure. I mean, again, not to get all philosophical and, Dr. Phil, but, we all have our journey, right? And there's all these little things that help you get to where you need to go. And if Ohio State losing a few years ago in the college football playoff in a game they really had Georgia beat, if that helped you get to this point to where now you're holding the trophy, okay, cool. And with Ryan Day, look, I was kidding with one of my friends last night. We were texting, and it was like, yeah, Ryan Day went from a bum to one of the best coaches in college football in the last month. Because he has. And I think, to be fair, after the Michigan loss, you look at Ryan Day's record, and whether it's playing Michigan or being in the college football playoff, it's not that impressive. For a guy who has won, he has a higher winning percentage than Jim Tressel at Ohio State. His winning percentage is vile. He's averaging like one loss a year, is Ryan Day. But he was handed, we talk about this all the time, he was handed a brand new Tesla by Urban Meyer. And he really hadn't done a lot with it because at Ohio State, and again, I lived in the state of Ohio for 2 years, they don't care about your one-loss record. They care, did you beat Michigan, and did you crush it in the postseason? That's what they care about. Flat out it. And if you can't check those two boxes consistently, you'll be the ex-head coach at Ohio State. They don't care. If you go 10-2 every year, but you lose to Michigan and you lose in the postseason, you're not going to be around long. That's just the way it is at Ohio State. So Ryan Day really hadn't done a lot to make you go, wow, he's on the level of Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel at Ohio State, or he's on the level of, some of the great coaches in college football, like when Nick Saban was running around, or Kirby Smart, or Jim Harbaugh, or whoever the case. You just didn't look at Ryan Day as you did those guys. Because you're like, yeah, okay, he took a really nice, fancy, expensive car and he hasn't wrecked it, but he hadn't done a whole lot with it either. And I mean, from Ohio State perspective, he hadn't done a whole lot. I mean, look, 8% of the college football programs in America would take the Ohio State one-loss record every year. They go, man, well, we're good with that. But again, not in the state of Ohio. Just not down with it. So I think if you're looking through the lens of A, the expectation in Columbus, B, what Ryan Day was handed, and C, what he has done, I don't think it's a stretch or a hot take or any of that other ridiculousness to say that this guy really hasn't put Ohio State where they want to be. He hasn't. He's gotten close, just hadn't finished the deal. We finally finished the deal. And the toughest deal, they went through 4 legit opponents. They did. Tennessee's a good football team. They mashed Tennessee. Oregon was number 1. They just scored again on Oregon while we were talking. Texas is very talented. They don't play up to their talent, but they're very talented. And the ironic part is Texas gave Ohio State their biggest fight. And then Notre Dame, look, say what you want. Only lost 1 game all year until last night. So Ohio State went through it. And by the way, that Notre Dame team beat Georgia. So Ohio State had a rugged run, the first, 12-team college football playoff where you got to win more than a couple of games, and Ohio State came out with the championship. You got to give them their props, and Ryan Day as well. Now, Ryan Day's won a national championship. Now, he does move up a notch. He does in the past. There are not too many guys sitting around right now who can say they won a national championship. So one of the biggest question marks on Ryan Day has been wiped out. To his credit and to his team's credit. All right, the other side of it, cut 30, Marcus Freeman, Dave. Here's a Notre Dame head coach on getting down big, quick in this football game.
Yeah, I mean, there was some things on both sides of the ball that we don't normally do, and some communication mistakes, self-inflicted wounds that we haven't been doing past few weeks. You're always making mistakes, but those type of detrimental mistakes when you play a really, really good football team cost you points. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that has stuck out to me, even, in between series of communication. Hey, we're good, we got it. Well, we can't make mistakes. And so it falls on my shoulders. And, as the head coach, we have to prepare and be better prepared for this moment. These guys gave everything they got. And you sit up here and you listen to these two guys speak and the passion they have for Notre Dame and each other in that locker room. I mean, I'm just sitting here listening like this is one of the greatest gifts in life, is to be able to be the leader of this program, because you have great young people like this that share the blame when you have, to share the success when you win and own the blame when you lose. But I'm better because of them. But we just have to be better. I got to make sure we prepare better for this next opportunity that we have in the future.
Look, Notre Dame squeezed as much as they could out of that football team. And just to credit the players and credit to Marcus Freeman. Again, another guy who kind of wiped out a question mark. I said this after the Northern Illinois game. If you look at every year under Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's lost games they should have won. Games they have no business losing. And I was like, at some point, is Marcus Freeman more than just a recruiter who looks good on the media guide, who walks in the living room and the moms go, wow, he's really dreamy. Look at those shoulders. And Marcus Freeman, you going 14-2 and getting to the national championship game, that wipes out a bit of that. Now we'll see, can Marcus Freeman stack it? Can he start consistently winning at a high level at Notre Dame, or Or are you kind of like in the crew with a Gene Chizik? You have one good, one excellent year where everything went your way and you had the right guys, or the right guy in Chizik's case, and you had that one magical year. I mean, I didn't see this coming from Notre Dame after that Northern Illinois loss. I'd just be honest. So is this Marcus Freeman? Is he one of the best young up-and-coming coaches in college football, or is this just a 1 year where everything just kind of flowed together and Notre Dame made a heck of a run? We'll find out. But I did not see this coming with Notre Dame. Did not, just to be fair. If you look at this football game, I mean, that Notre Dame drive right out the gate was just stupid, right? That might have been Notre Dame's best drive of the year when you take a look at the opponent and the opponent's defense. And the Irish had the ball almost the whole first quarter. It was insane. 9 minutes, 45 seconds, you go 18 plays, 75 yards. And obviously, far and away, their best drive of the night. I think 44 of their 53 rushing yards came on that drive. Besides that, they could do squat running the ball. Then they got down big and just had to kind of almost abandon the run. But I thought one of the biggest keys to this football game was Ohio State's quick response. They go down the field with 11 plays, 75 yards. They get the answer to tie it at 7. And then the other important moment was when they forced Notre Dame to punt, and then Ohio State goes back down the field and scores on a 10-play drive. Now they're up 14-7. That was a huge sequence in the football game. If Notre Dame could have scored a touchdown and came back with a stop, at least for right then and there, you're like, oh, maybe Notre Dame will hang out in this thing. But Ohio State just went, okay. All right. Time to get serious. And you saw what happened. They were up 31-7 at one point. So, but Ohio State's defense, after that first drive, up until Notre Dame finally scored, late third quarter? The Ohio State defense just stoned the Notre Dame offense. And, when I was writing the thing on Gamecock Central, I was like, look, for me, Notre Dame had to get turnovers in Ohio State's red zone. They had to win the middle 8, and they couldn't fall behind. And they didn't win the middle 8. They forced one turnover that did turn the momentum, at least temporarily, and obviously they fell way behind. All right, Firehouse Sub Text the hour coming next, 803-404-6100 halftime show. Terry Ford hanging out here with our buddy David Ayer. We're here till 3 on the game. Oh, it's a halftime show. Terry Ford. Tyler Head will be back with us tomorrow. David Ayer's here, though. So you watched the game last night, 'cause I know you're a massive college football championship game guy.
Well, I didn't care about either team much. But, yeah, I watched it.
Did you watch the whole thing?
Yeah.
Now, it was 28-7. Were you ready to turn it off for 31-7?
I started to call you at the end of the first half going, this is over. I'm going to go get something to eat.
Yeah, you almost start watching Severance. I'm done.
Yeah.
Severance dropped, dude. I'm checking out of this. So you hung in there, though. Good for you.
And I love the snow games in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
They were great.
You know what? I love being out in the snow, running around, and it's fun. I hate shoveling it. I did that yesterday, by the way. I had to shovel it yesterday. That was exciting.
Might have to do that here tonight.
I know. I was up at the place up north, and up north we got like 3-4 inches or something. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't awful. But, yeah, so I was out there shoveling the driveway and the sidewalk and the steps. And it's funny because my youngest is joking around because he thinks he's funny because he's 17. Punk. And I was just sitting there and he says, you know, Dad, because I'm going out there to shovel. And he's like, because he was doing something for school or whatever. And I was like, I'm going out there to shovel. He goes, you know, Dad, at your age, you know, I read you might have a heart attack. I said, good idea. You're going to go do it now. No, you're right. I don't want to have a heart attack. You can go out there and shovel. But, Dad, no, you're right. You're looking out for my health. You're a good kid. Go out there and shovel.
You know, back when I was a kid, on the back of comic books, they had an ad for a flamethrower to melt snow.
A real flamethrower?
Yeah, a real flamethrower. You'd pour gasoline in it, light it. Seems like a good idea to me. I mean, why can't we do that? It's on the back of comic books. Then $10 and,
That's actually funny. A flamethrower. God, wouldn't it be great if somebody in your neighborhood bought it?
I think the guy 3 houses down did.
Did he actually have one?
Well, it never snowed, so he just like
okay. All right. He just
bushes.
he just burns bushes. Like it's an old school, real like flamethrower, right?
I mean, it'd work.
I guess. I'm thinking flamethrower. I'm like thinking of those things like the military used when they were just like burning down stuff.
Yeah.
Was that what he had?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit smaller, but hey, I think it held like 2 gallons of gas.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
He advertising to 12-year-old kids.
Right. Oh, wow. Hey, in the back of a comic book. Mommy, can I get a flamethrower?
Sure, why not?
That's that generation. Sure, we'll buy you one as long as you stay outside and play till like dark. We don't want you coming in the house. It was always great when you came home. And he looked at you like, why are you here? It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Go outside and play. Yeah. Come home when it's dark. Come home when it's dark. They were like, but the funny thing about that back then, you remember this, like they didn't want you in the house. Go play. But if you didn't come home for dinner on time, you didn't want your mom or dad coming through the neighborhood looking for you.
Oh, no.
That didn't end well. And there were some parents that pop you in front of like your buddies.
Oh, my mom got me with a fly swatter in the
a fly swatter. Really? A fly swatter. Man.
No, just 2 blocks away down over at Billy's house.
Popping you with a fly swatter on the way home. I told you to be home at 6. Whenever they pop you by every word.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank God my parents weren't give me a smack in front of like the neighborhood. They didn't do that. There were parents in the neighborhood that would do that. They grab their kid and just start whopping them and take them on home. One dad would put his kid up on his shoulder and just pop him on the butt as he carried him home.
And they always go, this is going to hurt me more than it does you.
This hurts me more than you. And no, I don't think so. I don't know much because I'm a kid, but I don't think this is hurting you at all. Unless your hand is numb or popping me on the backside. All right, Firehouse Subtech. I don't know how we got there. How'd that happen, Dave? I blame you for that. I don't know what we went from the football game to getting your butt whipped when you're not home in time for dinner.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Well,
that
it's
happened.
shoveling snow, and why can't
Oh,
we go to
that's
the
where it was, the shoveling snow. Firehouse subtext the hour. Who would win a fight between Marcus Freeman's hairline and Carlos Boozer's beard? That's a good one. I'm going to go with Freeman's hair. Boozer's got a nice beard. All right, here's your Firehouse subtext the hour. Appreciate it. That's a good one. 803-404-6100. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. The way too early top 25 is out of the Gamecocks in it. We'll talk about that next. Halftime show, 1 o'clock hour means football, and more football, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on the game. Our winter indoor golf tournament, the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic, is coming. January 30th, 31st, February 1st. $150 to register, a two-man team. Bookings are available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Food included as well. You can win season tickets also for the South Carolina Gamecocks. Baseball. Call Pro Swing 803-528-1617. Again, January 30th, 31st, February the 1st. 3-day tournament. Again, 803-528-1617. It's right down the road here in Forest. We were there on Friday. We'll be there for the Thursday, Friday days of the tournament as well in 2 weeks. But yeah, we were there on Friday. That place is cool, man. Again, I'm not a golfer. It's not my bag. Golfing is not my thing. But that place was fun. I just want to sit on the couches and hang out and eat. Bonefish, the food was fantastic. Knocked me down some shrimp tacos. So, again, 803-528-1670, the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Hopefully we get it going. It's just like what we do at Charwood Outdoors with Rock and the crew. So our first annual indoor classic at Pro Swing on Forest Drive. All right, so the way too early top 25 came out after Ohio State beat Notre Dame 34-23. And we'll get back to talking more about that game in a minute. But the way too early top 25 has popped to the surprise of no one, because that's what we do. Number one, I know you're going to be stunned, Ohio State. They lose a ton of folks, but they also have, like, stupid talent. Obviously, Jermaine Smith is back. Julian Sayin could be the starting quarterback. Five-star prospect transferred from Alabama when Nick Saban left. We'll see. I mean, again, Ohio State could always go in the portal and get another veteran quarterback. But Julian Sayin is a five-star kid who sat behind Will Howard this year. They have a core of players on both sides of the ball. Of course, again, Ohio State covered in five stars. Yeah, they're losing a lot of important pieces, but they've got talent. Texas at 2, Penn State is at 3, Fighting Irish of Notre Dame are sitting at 4, Georgia is at 5, Oregon Ducks are at 6. There's a theme here. All these teams in a playoff last year. Clemson is 7th. They have Cade Klubnik and some other very important pieces on both sides of the ball coming back. They're sitting at 7. LSU, according to a lot of experts, crushed it in the transfer portal to go with the talent they already have. I just think there's something going on there that needs to be fixed. I don't know. Look, Brian Kelly's a really good head coach. No, I don't think you can argue Brian Kelly's track record. Even at LSU, no, he has not been in the college football playoff. He hasn't won an SEC championship, but LSU has been really good. They just haven't gotten to that next level that they get to with every coach at some point. Yes, is it a bad look for Brian Kelly that Notre Dame played in the national championship game when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because he didn't think he could compete to win a national championship at South Bend? Yeah, but Brian Kelly's a really good coach. Last year, with all the craziness that went on in Baton Rouge, they still won 9 games. But it just feels like something's off there. And I don't know if it's Brian Kelly's got to evolve in this new world that, we see in college athletics. Because he comes off, Brian Kelly comes off as that guy at your job who's really good at his job, but nobody wants to hang out with him because he's kind of a miserable guy. Brian Kelly doesn't come off as, hey, I want to have a beer with that dude. He comes off as, I don't know if I'd have a beer with that dude if he's buying. Again, behind the scenes, I haven't been behind the curtain with Brian Kelly, all access, but he just comes off as that guy. And there were some things at LSU last year that were interesting between Kelly and his players. Now, to be fair, I mean, again, they brought in guys from the portal. Have they lost some guys? Yeah, but it's not like a mass exodus is running out of the football complex at LSU. So we'll see. But LSU is sitting at number 8. Number 9, BYU, coming off an 11-2 season. They got their coach off the hot seat. And then at number 10, South Carolina Gamecocks. According to ESPN, here's the outlook for 2025. After a bounce-back campaign in which the Gamecocks won four more games rather than they did in 2023, including victories over Texas A&M, Missouri, and Clemson, they'll have to replace the heart and soul of their defense this offseason. There are big personnel losses on all three levels of the defense. Kyle Kennard, TJ Sanders, Nick Ammonwari, the linebackers. Three additions from the portal: defensive tackle Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, Sean Murphy, and Jalon Brown might be able to help out the D. Lenora Sellers will be working under new offensive coordinator Mike Shula, and improving his pocket presence and consistency will be a priority. Rashul Faison, who ran for over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns at Utah State in 2024, will get the chance to replace leading rusher Rocket Sanders. If Sellers improves, the Gamecocks might be an even bigger surprise in 2025. So there you go. South Carolina sitting at number 10 in the way too early ESPN top 25 for 2025. And yeah, I mean, all that makes sense, right, in the capsule. If Lenora Sellers takes another step, he took steps last part of the season. If he continues down that path and becomes even more consistently wow, and just more consistent in general, man, you got something. You have something, there's no doubt. And obviously there are some, I mean, when you lose, 37 seniors, you got to replace some people. That's going to be huge too. Will some youngins step up? Will the portal additions we've seen so far, will they click? If they click like they clicked last year, wow, that'll be phenomenal. Can you get anybody else out of the portal? We'll talk about that in a minute. But South Carolina right now sitting at number 10 in the preseason. Now, and you're in the SEC. LSU is put in here ahead of you. Also, Georgia is put in ahead of you, and Texas. So 3 SEC teams, and then you throw yourself in. That's 4 SEC teams in the top 10. But right now, I mean, if South Carolina can get that next step from Lenora Sellers, and at least some of these unknown pieces can become known commodities, and all of a sudden you are replacing the talent that you lost from last year. You look at the SEC. I mean, Steve Sarkisian, 2 straight years in the playoff. I mean, look, Texas, I guess, yeah, back. You know, Georgia's Georgia. They're going to be competing. I mean, Georgia wasn't what they've been previously under Kirby, but they still made the college football playoff. And we talked about LSU a few minutes ago. So that's some nice air that South Carolina sitting in with what the expectations could be for next year. But when you look at it, if your quarterback does become a more consistent big-time playmaker, that means your offense becomes more consistently explosive. And if your defense can be 80% of what it was last year, that's a good formula. So we'll see. But the SEC isn't, you know, again, it's good. It's a deep league. But you're, you know, again, Kirby's had better teams than we just saw. And Nick is no longer in Tuscaloosa. And for some reason, and this might change, but under Steve Sarkisian, Texas, as talented as they are, and they made the playoff twice, you watch them, you go, you know, you guys should be better. Because Texas goes through these games for like 8-10 minutes where they're like asleep. So they have to get consistently better as well. So that's where South Carolina's sitting in the ESPN way too early top 25 preseason poll. In case you haven't heard, and this is from our buddies at Gamecock Central, Wes Mitchell. Trey Wallace, the wide receiver, went in the transfer portal from Penn State after the Nittany Lions lost to Notre Dame in the college football playoff. Was scheduled to visit South Carolina. Wallace will not. According to sources who have told Gamecock Central that Wallace instead will probably end up either Texas A&M or Ole Miss. You're going, oh, money or more money. And it could be that simple. You know, A&M and Ole Miss can offer Wallace NIL money that South Carolina can't, or A&M and Ole Miss are offering NIL money that's higher than South Carolina wants to go. Could be something that simple. Could be other stuff. But Trey Wallace no longer visiting South Carolina as originally scheduled. I mean, to me, you'd want to play with the quarterback because right now the quarterback at South Carolina is better than the quarterback at Texas A&M or Ole Miss. Just saying. Could be simple as NIL. Or it could not be that. It could be something else we don't even know about. But Trey Wallace will not be making his visit to South Carolina. Right now, the receiver room, you have Nick Harbor, Mazeo Bennett, Jared Brown. You have Dre Jacobs. You got a lot of potential in there with Harbor, who was a high 4-star / 5-star, who got better during the year. Nick Harbor started to look like a wide receiver by the end of the year. We'll see if he can continue to build on that. Mazeo Bennett had some really nice moments last year as a freshman, and you hope he can only get better. Jared Brown was hurt and really playing out of position. Brown is not a receiver to play outside. He's a slot guy. But South Carolina, they put Mazeo Bennett in the slot. Jared Brown has been playing out wide. And Dre Jacobs had a couple of moments early in the year, and then he got nicked up and then kind of disappeared. But that's where you're at right now. Plus, you brought in a bunch of youngins, 5 high school signees at wide receiver already on campus to go through spring practice. And you can always hit the portal later for a wide receiver. Might not be a wow guy to change the face of your passing game, but it might be a guy who's got a history of being productive, and maybe he can fit a need to go with all the other possibilities you got in that wide receiver room. So that's where that stands. There will not be a visit from Trey Wallace, who's transferring from Penn State. Most likely Wallace will end up at A&M or Ole Miss. All right, football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. A lot of NFL playoff football over the weekend. We'll start to jump into that as we have the AFC and NFC championship game set. We'll discuss it next. Terry Ford, David Ayer, halftime show. Appreciate you hanging out with us as we go till 3 on the game.
steps up, throws, and he got it. Touchdown, Kelsey.
That is Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce, Travis Kelce with a touchdown catch. And obviously, Kansas City gets the win over the Texans. And again, look, is anybody surprised Kansas City won? Of course not. Now, the Texans outgained the Chiefs. But the Texans, look, they shot themselves in the feet. I mean, first of all, C.J. Stroud was sacked 8 times. Obviously, can't have that happen. And the Texans soiled themselves on special teams, gave a big return to Kansas City on the opening kickoff. Then Fairbairn, the kicker, misses an extra point and 2 field goals. So the Texans did a lot to themselves. And we can't forget that. But there was also, again, we have these all the time with Kansas City now. There was some interesting calls that involved the Houston Texan defenders and quarterback Patrick Mahomes. A couple of, unnecessary roughness calls. One was roughing the passer. One was, I guess, a hit to the head as Mahomes took off out of the pocket. And we look at this all the time. I mean, and I've seen this for 2 days now. People throwing out stats of penalties called on the Chiefs in the postseason and penalties called on the Chiefs' opponents. And you can twist and turn numbers all you want. But it always feels like that even though maybe the penalty, numbers are close to even or the yards are close to even or whatever the case, it always seems like the Chiefs get a big call in a big moment. It just does. Ever since the ticky-tack call that they got when they lost the AFC Championship game against New England in Mahomes' first year as a starter, when Dee Ford, no relation, flicked his finger or fingers across Tom Brady's helmet. Also remember Ford jumped off sides, I think it was, in that game. But the Chiefs, it just feels like in a big moment, the Chiefs get a call. It just feels that way watching them. Do I think there's a big conspiracy where the league gets together under the cone of silence and says, okay, what do we do this week so the Chiefs win? No, I don't think that's going on. But the teams that are a dynasty and the quarterback that is a future Hall of Famer, do they get calls at times? Yeah, I mean, we talk about this with dynasties for years. I remember, you go way back. Steelers got calls. Cowboys got calls. 49ers got calls. Patriots got calls. Their players are all protected compared to others. I mean, we always do it. We talk like that because, we figure the good teams are always getting the love. And the high-level quarterbacks are always getting the love. And when you watch Patrick Mahomes, barely get touched or manipulate a call to get a 15-yard penalty, and then you see another quarterback over the weekend, get hit right by the boundary and dragged out of bounds 5 yards and nobody even throws a flag. You're like, what? But that's just how we look at this point. I mean, I've got a couple ideas about it. Before we get to what I think, Troy Aikman, cut 21, Dave. Troy Aikman calls out the poor officiating in the Houston-Kansas City game regarding one of the penalties called that benefited Patrick Mahomes.
Personal foul, unnecessary roughness, defense number 39.
Come on.
15-yard penalty.
Here's the end of it. Yeah, I mean, he's a runner, and I could not disagree with that one more, and he barely gets hit. That's the second penalty now that's been called against the Texans.
Yeah, this is the second one. Patrick Mahomes scrambles, he's out of the pocket. And he's now a runner. He is now a running back. He is no longer a quarterback that is being protected by the rules of the pocket. He is now taken off and he becomes a runner. And Mahomes is looking around and moving around. And then as the Texans converge on Mahomes, in the last second, he drops to the ground. And the two defenders go to hit him, and one grazes his helmet. And, oh my God, flags are thrown. My problem with that one is you're now a running back. How many times do we see a running back get cracked upside the head? when, like, just, again, this is what gets me about the rules. I get you want to protect quarterbacks. They're the marquee dudes. Mahomes is a marquee guy. The quarterbacks get paid all the money. People turn the game on to watch the quarterback. I get the whole thing. But here's the thing about, like, this rule in general. Mahomes takes off. He's running. You know what he's trying to do? Avoid getting hit. You know what defensive players are trying to do? Knock the hell out of him. So while they're trying to hit him going full speed, he's trying to avoid them going full speed, or ish. And when you do that, sometimes helmets graze across helmets. It's just dumb. And there's no, it's just, how am I going to, if I'm going to hit a guy and he moves, how am I going to contort my body like Cirque du Soleil so I don't, possibly hit him in an area of his body I wasn't trying to hit him? Guys are going on, it's just stupid. Guys are going 20 miles an hour trying to hit a guy, and a guy's trying to duck and dodge and okey doke not to get hit. Things are going to happen. If you launch yourself at someone and hit them in the head, not graze them, but hit them in the head, throw the flag. Absolutely. That's fine. If you want to have, when a quarterback's in the pocket, you can't hit him but in the belly button, okay, fine. Whatever. But once you take off and you're a running back, now it's on. Now you put yourself in harm's way. And you shouldn't be protected by those rules. And the double standard again, a running back got hit like Patrick Mahomes, there would not have been a flag. There would not have been. Here's the other part of this. And I say this all the time. Make everything reviewable. Terry, you can't do that. The game will be 9 hours. No, it won't. If you still stick with the rules you have now, that you get 3 challenges. You can just challenge anything. Maybe some of these ridiculous hits will get reversed. There's something else you could do. Again, you take off your running back. B, you can review everything. And that will put maybe a stop to some of this, because it's gotten ridiculous. And Mahomes isn't the only quarterback that tries to manipulate it. It's just he's the highest profile guy. He's the guy that pretends he's running out of bounds and cuts up the sideline for another 10 or 15 yards. We all go, ooh, okie doke, and look at Patrick Mahomes. But the defense will slow down because they know if they hit him, he'll flop out of bounds and get a 15-yard penalty on you. So he takes advantage of that and runs up the field. Again, he's manipulating the rule. It's not as bad as Kenny Pickett's fake slide when Pickett was at Pitt. That was the worst. But again, you're manipulating the rules to protect you. And that, to me, I get it to a point, but also you're kind of using something that's been put in so you don't get dismembered, and you're using it to your advantage. Like the late slide. That's another one. Some of these quarterbacks have mastered that late slide to where you slide at the last minute and the dude just is going to hit you because he has no choice. Because, again, it's not Cirque du Soleil. It's just not. D'Amico Ryan, let's get to cut 22, Dave. Talking about regarding the poor calls, a couple bad calls in the game against Kansas City. Ryan said it was like us against everybody.
How did you feel about some of the questionable or controversial penalties?
Yeah, we knew going into this game, man, it was us versus everybody. Right? When I say everybody, it's everybody. All of whatever. Everybody, the naysayers, the doubt, right? Everybody.
Yes, he caught himself, right? Everybody. We had to play against everybody. He couldn't say the refs, but he said everybody. We knew what he was talking about. And there have been some really cool, creative things put on the internet, on social media, about this whole narrative of the Chiefs get all the calls. It's pretty funny. They've been very funny. But it just feels that way. And again, when you see stats and numbers, and people can twist and turn stats and numbers to push their narrative. I mean, we do it as hosts, by the way. So I've seen numbers to support Kansas City gets more calls in the postseason than their opposition. I've seen people put up numbers about how over a season everything evens itself out. But it does feel like the Chiefs get that call in the moment they need a call. Like that first penalty on Patrick Mahomes, the first penalty on the roughing the passer, where, did Mahomes actually get hit in the head? He did get hit in the upper part of the body, and that can be a flag. But that was a 3rd and 5. It just feels like when there are big moments in a game, Kansas City, for some reason, gets that big call at times. They're the best team in football. It's a dynasty, But this is where we get, it's like you get frustrated, some people do, with some of the double standards on a team that good. They don't need the help. They're really good. They don't need help. And there is and you hear D'Amico Ryans, the head coach of the Texans. But the Texans, look, they outgained Kansas City 336 to 212, had more first downs, were better on third down. The Texans did a lot of things you do to win a football game, but they also made some huge mistakes you can't make against Kansas City and leave with a W. Now the Chiefs host the Bills. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's what went down on Saturday with Kansas City and Houston. It wasn't so much the Chiefs winning. We knew that was going to happen, but it was here we go again with the Kansas City gets all the calls. And Patrick Mahomes manipulates the rules to protect him to get calls. So, all right, football in the 1 o'clock hour. Also, Dave has found out more info on this whole flamethrower thing. We got to get to that. Dave actually found a video of a man using a flamethrower in his yard. That didn't look dangerous at all. Well, roll Mabel around a little bit. She's on fire. Halftime show, football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. I tell you, that was something on Saturday. Didn't see it coming. The Lions soiled all over themselves on national television. Losing to the Commanders 45-31, 15 wins, gone. Number 1 seed in the NFC, gone. Done. And again, here's when you lose like that, whether it's players, coaches, fans, whatever, it takes a little bit to go, hey, you know what, that was a great year. We won 15 games, number 1 seed. It was fantastic. That was a lot of fun. No, all you know is you lost as the number 1 seed at home to a wild card team with a rookie quarterback. A rookie quarterback who's really good, but a rookie quarterback. And your quarterback threw 3 picks. And your quarterback also fumbled. So your quarterback committed 4 turnovers. The rookie quarterback committed 0 turnovers. And you go home. And, look, Detroit was never like behind by 20 or anything. They lost by 14. But to me, the Lions ran the ball 23 times. They threw it 43. And it's a heck of an offense. But to me, I thought Detroit would run the ball more in this game. The Commanders are a bad run defense. They're near the bottom of the NFL versus the run. To me, it's a no-brainer. Jahmyr Gibbs, and you throw a taste of David Montgomery coming back from an injury, and you just run over the Commanders. Yeah, you're going to throw it. Jared Goff will do some play action. You got weapons. You got, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got, Jamison Williams, the tight end Sam Laporta. Gibbs out of the backfield can catch it. No one's saying you're not going to throw it, but I thought Detroit would punish Washington with the Lions' ground game, which is so good. And kind of didn't work out that way. The Lions ran for, ready for this? All right, take away Jamison Williams' 61-yard touchdown on the reverse. Jahmyr Gibbs still ran 14 times for 105 yards. Gibbs averaged 7.5 yards a carry. Gibbs and Montgomery combined 131 yards on 21 carries. That's really good. I just thought Detroit would run it more. But the Lions beat themselves with the turnovers. The pick 6 was a real backbreaker thrown by Jared Goff. And some of those throws Goff made just were bad. Either inaccurate, poor decisions, you name it. Sometimes both. But that pick 6 by Martin, the Commanders DB, in the second quarter, about 5 minutes left, turned a 17-14 Washington lead into a 24-14 lead, and Detroit was just chasing its tail from there. They cut it to 3 a couple of times, but they could never get the stop. And the Lions' defense didn't help, and the Lions' offense, they helped Washington a lot with turnovers. It was just... I felt bad for the Lions. I felt bad for Dan Campbell. Here's Dan Campbell, cut 24, Dave. A very emotional Dan Campbell after the loss to Washington.
When you lose these games, man, it's like the players, what they put into it. A lot of people don't know, what they go through. You have to get up. Bodies beat you. Mentally stay locked in and do those things. So, long season. It's my fault. It's my fault.
There's Campbell taking accountability. That's what you do as the head coach. You're the guy in charge. You take the blame. It's just the way it goes. And the Lions, they kind of blew a great season. I thought Detroit's defensive issues with the injuries would catch up to them playing the Eagles, for an example. And Saquon Barkley would go nuts. And, the Eagles, with all those weapons in the passing game, Jalen Hurts could actually get the ball to them consistently. And I figured the Eagles would be the team to knock the Lions out because of Detroit's, wounded on defense. Man, Jaden Daniels was so good. He just was. I mean, Daniels was playing like the veteran who's quarterbacked in a Super Bowl and multiple playoff games, not Jared Goff. And Daniels didn't get sacked, threw for 299 yards, 9.5 yards an attempt, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Also ran 16 times for 51 yards, didn't put the ball on the ground. Just Daniels was excellent. And the one theme about this weekend in the NFL, when teams are close in ability or close on paper, or one team is much better, typically if you make mistakes, that's how you get beat. Detroit's better than Washington. They just are. But not when you turn the rock over, 5 times? And your quarterback gives away 4 of them? You're going to lose. You are. I mean, that's just reality. The Texans, with all those mistakes on special teams. In fact, you couldn't protect your quarterback. You're going to lose. A lot of times it's the teams that just play cleaner. One thing Kansas City does, among all the things they do well, because you don't win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years if you don't do a lot of things well, they just don't beat themselves. They very rarely, have self-inflicted wounds. You don't see them stabbing themselves in the feet. They pretty much say, okay, you got to beat us. We're not going to beat ourselves. And that's an issue. And we'll talk about another game where a team beat themselves as much as they got beat. But that's what happened to Detroit. Take nothing away from Washington. Again, Jaden Daniels was phenomenal. Washington's receivers made plays. The defense got turnovers. But Detroit's the better team. If Detroit plays clean, the Lions win. Heck, with all the mistakes Detroit had, they lost by 14. But now, what is it with your window? If you're the Lions, you're going to lose. You lost your offensive coordinators, now the new head coach in Chicago. Your defensive coordinator will probably be the head coach either with the Jets or the Saints. Now you got to replace your coordinators. Eventually, this thing called the salary cap bites you in the backside because you have started paying your core players. So was this the window for Detroit, or can they extend the window out a few years? We'll see. But that's a tough one, man. That's a tough one to take. I mean, all those Detroit greats like the Barry Sanders and guys like that were there, and they were watching that debacle. The fans who were all geeked up for a trip to the NFC Championship game the second year in a row, they watched that debacle. It was just... I like Dan Campbell. I'd love to see the Lions win a Super Bowl. I was truly bummed. But watching Jaden Daniels, man, he can play. He can just flat out play. There's no doubt about it. So that's what happened. Lions are out, and now the Commanders will roll off to Philly to take on the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. We'll get to what happened on Sunday with the Eagles and the Rams and the Ravens and the Bills. We got football in the 1 o'clock hour. Also, Dave, we'll tease us a little bit. Dave found a man on video actually using a flame. Now, we talked about a flamethrower earlier in the show. You can actually get a flamethrower out, and you can forget shoveling your snow. Just buy a flamethrower and just melt the snow off your driveway and your sidewalk and your porch with a flamethrower. Like an old school flamethrower.
You can get that at a pawn shop.
You see walking, excuse me. What's your name, Spike? Spike, you got any flamethrowers?
I'll take a jigsaw and a flamethrower, please.
That video is hilarious. That dude is just flamethrowing the driveway. I was kidding with you. I'm like, don't sneeze.
Does he turn around and go, hey, there's ice on the top of the house?
I'll get it. Hey, let me get that off your windshield. It's just crazy. And then you dug up that back in 1972, you can get a flamethrower for like $6.98. Originally, Dave, $9.98. Can you see that? You look at your neighbor, Edgar.
Good old days.
Look at this flamethrower. Got it for $7. Uh-huh. Flamethrower. There's a picture of like a soccer mom flamethrowing the snow on her porch. I love the 70s. All right, football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Also, we'll get our Firehouse sub-text, the hour, 803-404-6100 as well. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, David Dare, we go to 3 on the game. Time to get our Firehouse sub text of the hour. (803-404-6100). Of course, we'll talk more flamethrower with Dave. Dave's like geeking on the flamethrowers. He's having a good time. All right, Firehouse sub text of the hour, 803-404-6100. And I'm going to read this right. When are y'all going to discuss the weakness of Ohio State's regular season schedule? Well, it's ironic that Ohio State had set the record for beating most top 5 teams in a season. I think 5. And that's their run through the college football playoff, to be fair. They had a good amount of that. Ohio State, my computer is freezing up. Ohio State, their schedule, if you look at it, I mean, they lost to Michigan, a Michigan team that wasn't. Michigan beat Alabama in that bowl. Yeah, Alabama didn't care. They didn't care about that game. I mean, Ohio State should have smacked Michigan all over the place, and they did not, because Michigan lives in their head. They have built a really nice rancher. Now, if you look at the season, Ohio State did beat a top 5 Penn State team. I mean, do I think Penn State, look, they got to the college football semifinals. They didn't beat anybody to get there, but they got there. I'm not someone who puts Penn State as one of the best teams in the country, but to Penn State's credit, hey, they were a top 5 team when Ohio State got that W. Indiana was a top 10 team. Look, I thought Indiana was way overranked. Ohio State did beat Indiana. They beat Purdue. I think Dave and I could beat Purdue. Ohio State lost to Oregon and Eugene by a point. So, yeah, if you want to sit here and say it's not the most daunting schedule in the world, but compared to some other teams.
Look at Notre Dame's schedule.
I know Notre Dame's schedule was ridiculous. They lost to Northern Illinois. They did beat Army and Navy. They crushed a couple of middle schools in Indiana.
Purdue.
I think a middle school could beat Purdue. So there were some teams with not the greatest strength of schedule running through this thing, but we can talk about that all day. But Ohio State, part of this is when you're highly ranked to start a season and you have the cachet and the brand awareness that Ohio State has, you're going to get love. You just are. At Ohio State, they lost 1 point in Eugene. And then they're the awful loss to Michigan at home. But they were solidly in the college football playoff when you looked at the landscape of the rest of college football. They just were. And the win, even though I think beating Penn State or Indiana is very wow, they were teams that were ranked. Penn State was in the top 5. Indiana was in the top 10. At that point. So, I get you. I understand where you're coming from. But you look at the rest of the country, a lot of these teams that were highly ranked, Texas, let's be fair. Texas beat Texas A&M, and they did go to the big house and beat Michigan. But Texas SEC schedule besides A&M wasn't really tough. Penn State schedule, Notre Dame, like Dave said, Indiana schedule was embarrassing. SMU's wasn't very good either. So we just went through a lot of the college football playoff field saying their schedules were nothing to write home about. I get you, though, Texter. If you want to go deeper dive and say Indiana and Penn State were overranked, I won't argue with you, even though Penn State got to the college football semifinal. If you take a minute and look at the Penn State schedule, that's not going to wow you. They beat SMU and Boise State to get to the semifinal. That was not a treacherous road through the college football playoff. Penn State's biggest win of the year was beating number 19 Illinois. That's it. That's it. But also, once you get in that playoff, you can roll through it. and play whoever they have in front of you, and you start winning games and advancing, that's a thing too. I appreciate the text. I see where you're coming from, 803-404-6100. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. We'll look at the other 2 games from the NFL over the weekend and also let you know where South Carolina is in the way too early top 25 from ESPN. That's next on the Halftime Show. Oh, what's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Terry Ford, David Dare, halftime show as we roll till 3 on the game. We're busy this week. Firehouse Sub location on Forest Drive tomorrow, weather permitting. Gamecock Central will be taking it over with Wes and Chris and Tyler again 9 to noon. They open up, I believe, like 11 o'clock, 10:30, something like that. Pop over, grab a sub, hang out with Tyler and Chris and Wes. I don't know, maybe they'll buy you one. Put it on their tab. That is tomorrow. Again, the Forest Drive location. Firehouse Subs here in Columbia. Craft and Draft in Columbia on Thursday. One of our craft beer roadies with Jay and Elijah. Again, that's on Thursday. At Craft and Draft on Divine, I believe. So that will be Thursday as well. And, of course, all of our road shows sponsored by Schroeder's Towing. So we appreciate those folks for sponsoring us as we get out and do a lot of live shows in 2025. All right, so in case you missed it, South Carolina in the way too early top 25 polls. Number 10, ESPN. Clemson, by the way, is at 7 in the ESPN poll. On 3 has South Carolina at number 8. And the quote is there a more exciting quarterback in the sport heading into the offseason than our Sellers? South Carolina tasted success this past year, but if Sellers is more dynamic next year, alongside important pieces like left tackle Josiah Thompson, defensive end Dylan Stewart, the Gamecocks will be very good again. Clemson's at 10, by the way, in the top 25, the way too early top 25 with on 3. So that's where the Gamecocks are at on those two deals. Trey Wallace, wide receiver in the portal from Penn State. The hope was that Wallace would visit South Carolina. That's not happening. It feels like now it's down to Texas A&M and Ole Miss, two teams who, by the way, have very big bank accounts. I'm just saying. Could it be NIL? I don't know. We always go there, if not first, one of the first 3. Could have nothing to do with NIL, or it could be Ole Miss and A&M have more money to throw at Trey Wallace in South Carolina, or they're throwing more money at Trey Wallace in South Carolina thinks is the amount you should throw to Wallace. Again, it's the old right player, right price motto. Maybe South Carolina doesn't think Wallace is worth as much money as Ole Miss or A&M want to throw at Wallace. That could be it too. Or it could be nothing to do with money or NIL. Who knows? But no Trey Wallace here at South Carolina. All right, basketball over the weekend. We'll start with the women. An easy win over Oklahoma. But the story was Dawn Staley getting a new contract on Friday. And one of the interesting stipulations was Dawn Staley in the contract could leave for a WNBA or NBA gig. And here's Dawn Staley, cut 15, Dave, talking about she would never leave South Carolina for another college gig.
I don't know. I might up and leave. No, I mean, it's you got to have something. It's a give and take, like if it was important for me to have a guaranteed contract. It's important, but in having a guaranteed contract, you got to give them something. I will never leave here to go take another college job. It's nothing. Like, I have the best of the best here, and I really don't have I don't have a passion for the next level. I don't. I would have been gone, seriously. So to have it in there, it was just something fancy to have you ask me that question.
That was good. It's Dawn Staley explaining, okay, I've got that in there. The WNBA or the NBA could leave for one of those two one of those two kind of gigs. But it's just the idea that she says, I'm not interested in going to that level. Could that change? Sure it could, but that's her feeling right now. And why would you leave for another college job? You have the best job in the country. You have the best program in America, the best job in the country. They just paid you very nice to be here. So why would you even think about leaving? And Dawn said, the thing is in there about the WNBA or the NBA. Look, Dawn is making more money than pretty much all the WNBA coaches. Now, I think the NBA be interesting. If an NBA team reached out to Dawn Staley about being a head coach in the NBA, Dawn is a trailblazer in a lot of ways in her life. And everyone says at some point a female will be a head coach in the NBA. Everybody thinks it's going to be Becky Hammon, who's coaching the WNBA right now in Vegas, if my memory serves me. But, Dawn Staley, you couldn't throw that out of the realm of possibility. That would be the one I think she would bite for, or really think hard about biting for. But she's got a great gig. She's got a great gig. And, of course, again, South Carolina's women, they kicked Oklahoma all over the place on Sunday. The men, well, this is a weird game. At one point in the second half, now follow me, South Carolina and Oklahoma, two struggling teams in the SEC, were tied at 47 with about 12 minutes to go. Then Oklahoma decided they wanted to continue making buckets, and South Carolina decided they wanted to stop making buckets. You go from 47-47 with about 12 minutes to go to losing by 20 to Oklahoma, 82-62. A lot of things happened that weren't good in those last 12 minutes. So South Carolina is still winless in the SEC, along with, here's the shocker. I mean, it is surprising that South Carolina is winless. How about Arkansas with their fancy Hall of Fame coach, John Calipari, also winless in the league? Here's Lamont Paris, cut 6, Dave, talking about chasing that first SEC win.
No, it just is what it is. I mean, we're sitting here with these two starters down, and you have, I think in both of those games, you have a lead under a minute or around a minute in this game and in the Vanderbilt game, or a great opportunity to take the lead with the ball, and so you don't make it happen. So that's unfortunate that we haven't been able to. But the guys have to continue to stay positive because. Right. You watch Vandy beat Tennessee today. I didn't know that until you just told me. But you see Vandy beats Tennessee. Well, you should have won the game. You had 26 turnovers. You definitely should have won the game. So who's to say you can't beat anyone? Sure. We gotta continue just to play.
Yeah, I mean, I get where Lamont's coming from. Look, South Carolina had Auburn on the ropes, and you can say make a couple free throws and you win that game, which is not a bold statement. And Vanderbilt, you had the Vanderbilt game, even right in your hands as well, even though you committed 26 turnovers. So you've been right there on the doorstep to win 2 of these. And again, is 2-3 anything crazy? No, but it beats the heck out of 0-5. So you have been right there. Once on the road in Nashville and once at home at CLA. So, again, do I think South Carolina is not going to win a game? Of course I don't. They're going to win. They'll win at the worst a few conference games if this thing doesn't get a lot better. But when you had Alabama, we had Auburn beat, and you had Vandy close to beat, and you can't finish the deal, there is at least hope that you can be competitive against pretty much anybody on any given night or afternoon. You just got to finish the job. Now, having a couple guys in foul trouble didn't help. Let's get cut 1 real quick, Dave, from Lamont Paris. Colin Murray-Boyles and Nick Pringle were both in foul trouble again. And here is Lamont Paris talking about playing with Colin Murray-Boyles, Nick Pringle on the bench with foul trouble, and also the fact you're down 2 starters to begin with.
Yeah, fouls hurt those guys again, so we have to address that and see if what it is that's putting us in harm's way for those 2 guys in particular in terms of fouling. The funny thing is that there are a lot of guys that block a lot of shots and get a lot of steals. We're not neither of those guys are on that list of either of those 2 things, but we got to figure out what it is to keep them out of harm's way because they have to play, and they have to play well for us. I mean, that's just where we are. We're shorthanded, that's for sure. I mean, you think about it, if those 2 guys are in foul trouble, which they were in the first half. So we played the last 6 or 7 minutes of the first half without each of those 2 guys, right? And then you're also down Jamari and Miles. So in reality, you got 4 starters that you're without for that stretch of time. And that's going to impact most teams. I don't know who's built with such depth. Well, I mean, there's a couple teams out there, but it was built with so much depth that you can withstand all that. But it hurts if those guys get in foul trouble like that and just aren't able to play the minutes.
Yeah. Now you look moving forward. I mean, you have let's see, let's move up here and take a look at this. You have Florida on Wednesday at home, Mississippi State at home. You travel to Georgia. You have A&M at home. You go to Rupp to face Kentucky. Ole Miss at home. Florida on the road. At LSU. Texas at home. At Missouri. And then you get Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee. A lot of those teams are ranked or have been ranked. It's a tough road. The whole SEC is tough. Everybody's playing tough games. But your hope is, all right, if you had Auburn beat at home and let them off the mat and you couldn't seal the deal against Vanderbilt on the road, you can look around and say, okay, if you can beat Auburn, you should be able to try to at least maybe snag something at home against a ranked team. If you were on the road and almost took out Vanderbilt, you should be able to go on the road and beat LSU in Baton Rouge. Arkansas has been terrible, but the fear there with Arkansas is eventually they're going to get their stuff together because John Calipari is too good of a head coach. But, look, I get it. You're 0-5. And that'll send some of the fan base checking out. And you've lost 2 starters. That doesn't help. It really squeezes your depth. But there are some wins that hopefully you can pull. And maybe you can start by pulling off a nice big upset over a top 5 Florida team in your house on Wednesday. 6:30 pregame, 7 o'clock tip here at 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. All right, what's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Those last 2 NFL games we have not yipped about yet. The Bills and the Ravens and the Eagles and the Rams. We'll get to that next on the halftime show. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Terry Ford, David Ertl, 3 on The Game. What's trending at 2 here on the halftime show on the game, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. We're doing a cool contest with those folks here starting this week. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. All right, in the NFL, the other 2 games we have not talked about. Let's get cut 25 here, Dave. Get that stacked and ready to go in a second. First of all, the early game on Sunday had the Eagles hold on for dear life against the Rams. 28-22 was the final. Rams had the ball and a chance to steal this thing, but the Eagles' defense rose the occasion. Also, Saquon Barkley once again just went nuts. Go ahead and fire up 25, Dave.
It's wide open. You keep running. 118 yards and adding to it. There goes Barkley into the clear through the snow all the way home. He's hit another home run against the Rams, and this one might send them to the championship game.
Saquon Barkley, 2 touchdown runs, 1 78-yarder. Looked like he was shot out of a cannon. I think they clocked him at like 86 miles an hour. He was passing Lambos. It was crazy. Barkley went nuts, 26 carries, 205 yards, averaged about 8 yards a pop. Eagles ran for 285 because Jalen Hurts, 7 runs for 70 yards. Obviously, that's 10 yards a carry. Matthew Stafford was phenomenal. 26 of 44, 324 yards, 2 scores, making throws through the snow. And, again, the Rams had a chance. But the Eagles defense made the big plays at the end to hold off the Rams as Philly won 28-22. My thing with the Eagles is obviously Saquon Barkley's had a ridiculous season. The Eagle defense for the last, 10, 12 weeks has been one of the best in the league, if not the best. Their offensive line is good, and they might arguably have the best receiving core in the game with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, not to mention Saquon Barkley catching it out of the backfield. But why do they struggle throwing the ball? I mean, Jalen Hurts, again, 15 of 20, only 6.5 yards an attempt. Seemed like he really struggled throwing it in the snow. And look, I don't know if Hurts is still feeling the effects of that concussion. I don't know if Hurts has got something else going on. I don't know if the league caught up with Hurts after that big season that Jalon had a couple years ago and the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. I don't know if Hurts lost his offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, who became the head coach of the Colts. All I know is Jalen Hurts is not the same dude. He's just not. That passing game sputtering, and there's only 2 things. It's got to be Jalen Hurts or Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, soon to be head coach of the Cowboys. I just don't get it. With all those weapons and that good offensive line, why is your passing game struggling? They're going to have to throw the rock around at some point to beat Washington in the NFC Championship game. Now, typically rookie quarterbacks will become rookie quarterbacks at some point in the playoffs. At some way, shape, or form, they will revert to being a rookie quarterback. Jaden Daniels has not been a rookie quarterback all year. He's got 2 more games to be a rookie quarterback because rookie quarterback has never quarterbacked the team to win a Super Bowl. So we'll see. But Jalen Hurts is going to have to get much better at whipping the ball around the yard than he's been this year if they want to beat the Commanders. We're playing with house money, by the way. Nobody thinks they've got a shot outside of D.C. and Jaden Daniels' family. All right, the final game of the day. Yes, I'm a Ravens fan. Was I surprised what went down in Buffalo? No, not really. I try to be a realistic, objective fan. Like I said, I used to be a crazy fan that was not objective and lost his mind. And now that I have clarity and I've been through rehab and therapy, the Ravens, with Lamar Jackson as their starting quarterback, have found a way to fall short in the playoffs every year that they get in. They just do. It's a multitude of things. Everybody just wants to blame it on Lamar Jackson. Does Lamar get his share of blame? Sure. But it's more than Lamar Jackson. At times it's been the play calling, the lack of weapons around Lamar. The defense might make a critical error or commit a boneheaded penalty. Guys who are really good all of a sudden for one game aren't. It's just the way the Ravens have been under Lamar Jackson, and it always seems to be something. And there was a bunch of something Sunday in Buffalo. Here's the last something out of all the somethings. Dave, hit cut 27 for me, my friend.
It's going to roll, flip it, got it. Oh, the ball was dropped. He had the 2-point conversion in his hands.
That was Jim Nantz on the call. Mark Andrews, who doesn't drop passes, dropped the 2-point conversion. Mark Andrews, Raven tight end, who doesn't fumble, was stripped of the ball in Buffalo territory in the second half. Lamar Jackson, who threw 4 interceptions all year, threw maybe his worst pass of the entire season that got picked off. Lamar Jackson, who hasn't had multiple turnovers in a game since last year's AFC Championship game, had multiple turnovers. Defense got it together. Buffalo scored 6 points in the second half. Bills really didn't do much of anything in the second half. Ravens outscored Buffalo 15-6 in the second half. Bills couldn't stop the Ravens in the second half at all. The Ravens stopped the Ravens. Look, Buffalo won the game. 2 of the 3 Raven turnovers were legitimately forced by the Bills. But again, Baltimore, if you look at the stats in this football game, if I just told you this, Ravens would have more first downs than the Bills. Ravens would have about 140 more total yards, average over 7 yards a play, average 6 yards a carry on the ground, run for 176 yards. That Lamar Jackson would throw for 240. If I told you all those things, the Ravens would go 7-10 on third down. You go, Ravens won. Nope. 3 turnovers. 3 turnovers killed them. And the drops. Also, Derrick Henry dropped the pass. Look, one of the easiest pass in the world was down by his knees. But no one was in 10 yards, 15 yards, 100 yards, a billion yards of Derrick Henry. And he just couldn't hold on to it. Yeah, the elements were a thing. Sure they were. But Mark Andrews catches that 2-point conversion 97 times out of 100. And Mark Andrews hasn't fumbled in years. But that's what the Ravens do in the postseason. The Bills, to their credit, played clean. Josh Allen, to his credit, was a game manager on Sunday. He let the Ravens commit the mistakes. Josh Allen, who usually makes a lot of mistakes himself up until this year, Josh Allen, perfect job. Not trying to do too much, understanding the game and the situation. And Josh Allen did not put the ball in harm's way at all. The Bills ran for $150. And Buffalo stayed away from the killer mistake. Buffalo sat back and said, we'll let the Ravens make all the mistakes. This is who the Ravens are in the Lamar Jackson era. They find ways to lose playoff games. In the biggest moments, they come up the smallest. And with Lamar even said, going into the playoffs this year, he's like, I just get so amped up. I used to try to do too much, but I'm more relaxed now. Well, again, I think he tried to do too much on multiple occasions in the loss to Buffalo on Sunday. What makes Lamar Jackson so magical as a playmaker sometimes gets him in trouble. When you can sit there and break ankles and okey-doke like 3 guys and go run for 20 yards, you think you can do it all the time because you've done it. But sometimes, especially when you're in the playoffs and the intensity ratchets up and the stakes are at their highest, you look around and go, wow, there's 3 defenders about ready to see who can knock me into the parking lot. I think I'm going to throw the ball out of bounds and live for the next play. But when you're Lamar, you find ways to get out of situations that nobody can get out of. And you've done it before. But it seems like in the postseason, when Lamar tries to do these magical things, it blows up in his face at times. And look, it hasn't been him, like I said. Mark Andrews had the drop and the fumble. Last year, Todd Monken, I don't know what kind of game he was calling. I love Monken, but the play calling just was like, did someone test his blood alcohol level? Again, there's times the defense commits a big penalty, like on the pass interference in the game against Buffalo by former Bill Tre'Davious White. It's just that's the Ravens. We talk about the Chiefs finding ways to win in the postseason. The Ravens are the opposite. When they play the Bills or the Chiefs, they find a way to lose. And that's just reality right now. Hopefully it'll change. I heard an interesting comparison, two comparisons with Lamar Jackson's career arc. One was Phillip Rivers of the Chargers. Lots of numbers, successful regular season teams, make the playoffs, but don't go deep in the postseason. Chargers got the one AFC championship game with Phillip Rivers as the quarterback, and that's when they lost to the undefeated Patriots, if my memory serves me. The other example was Peyton Manning. It took Peyton Manning into his late 20s to have any success in the postseason. So I heard two different arcs where Lamar could go. It could be Peyton Manning, which we know turned out well, or Phillip Rivers, which situation never got better. We'll see. But Lamar Jackson's phenomenal. I love him. It's just this team, they find ways to not win playoff games. Derrick Henry was good, ran for over 5 yards a carry. There are people saying, oh, look, Henry only carried it 16 times. Should he have carried it more? Sure. But the Ravens ran at 30, and they threw at 25. A couple of those runs were Lamar taking off on what would be called pass plays. But still, the Ravens were pretty balanced. But yeah, it's never a bad thing to give the ball to Derrick Henry more. But I just feel like the Ravens lost that game again because they do things in critical moments that cost them playoff wins. And it happened again. And now Buffalo's going to go off and try to slay their demon in the AFC Championship game, which is pretty much everybody's demon, Kansas City. Today is January 21st. It's the greatest day in the history of the world. That's coming up next here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, David Ayer hanging out. We're talking sports and flamethrowers up until 3 on the game. I'll get to the greatest day in the history of the world in a second. First, again, tomorrow, Firehouse Sub, Forest Drive location, Gamecock Central takeover from 9 to noon tomorrow. Tyler and Wes and Chris will pop over there. Jeannie will be there setting everything up and making sure everything runs right. Ed Bird will be back here producing this sucker. So that's tomorrow, 9 to noon at the Firehouse Sub location on Forest Drive. All right. Greatest day in the history of the world we'll get to in a second. Again, to re-rack. South Carolina, the way too early top 25 polls for On3 and ESPN have the Gamecocks in the top 10. Number 8 on the On3 rankings, number 10 in ESPN's rankings. Trey Wallace, wide receiver, hit the portal from Penn State, will not be visiting Columbia. Instead, it looks like it's down to Texas A&M and Ole Miss to get Wallace. Obviously, the women won over the weekend over Oklahoma. The men, it was 47-47 with a little under 12 minutes to go, and then South Carolina went sideways. Oklahoma wins by 20. All righty, greatest day in the history of the world. I always throw you a few old school. On this day in 1921, Kennesaw Mountain Landis takes office as baseball's commissioner. Kennesaw Mountain Landis was brought in to stop the corruption and gambling and game fixing in baseball in the early 1900s. The Black Sox scandal had hit. The Black Sox obviously were the Chicago White Sox, and their court trial for fixing the World Series against Cleveland with gangsters, guess what? They were found not guilty in Chicago court. Aren't the Chicago White Sox in Chicago? Yeah, in Chicago court in Chicago? Yeah. What a coincidence. So baseball commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis came in and said, all right, so you didn't found guilty in a court of law. That's great. You're banned from baseball for life. And that's where the whole thing started with baseball's commissioner. And the first one, Kennesaw Mountain Landis. A lot of Hall of Fame stuff in Major League Baseball. 1947, Carl Hubble, Frankie Frisch, Mickey Cochran, Lefty Grove selected the Hall of Fame. Get this one. 1953, Dizzy Dean and Al Simmons were elected. The baseball writers passed over Joe DiMaggio in his first year of eligibility. Yeah. Passed over DiMaggio. That's why you get these kooks now, these old school guys who go, well, you know, if Joe DiMaggio wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer or if Babe Ruth wasn't unanimous. It's silly. They had a backlog of guys to get into the Hall of Fame. Now, should Joe DiMaggio have been a first ballot guy? Absolutely. But it was different in those days as they were ramping up the Hall of Fame. 1954, for the first time in NBA All-Star Game history, they had to play overtime. East won. Bob Cousy was the MVP. On this day in 1979, Terry Bradshaw throws 4 touchdown passes. The Steelers win their third Super Bowl, beating Dallas 35-31. Speaking of drops, that game was remembered. Jackie Smith was a heck of a tight end for years with the St. Louis Cardinals, went to Dallas at the end of his career, and dropped a huge potential touchdown pass in this game. And the Steelers got up big and hung on and won. This day in 1990, I'm not going to lie, the young version of Terry Ford loved John McEnroe. I love McEnroe. On this day in 1990, John McEnroe becomes the first player ever thrown out of the Australian Open. McEnroe's tantrum comes while leading. McEnroe was leading 2-1. Fourth set, he was down 2-4. Threw a fit, and they kicked him out of the Australian Open. You can't be serious. I love McEnroe as a young Terry Ford. Jeez. All right, 2007, Lovie Smith and Tony Dungy become the first black head coaches to face each other in a Super Bowl. Lovie Smith became the first black head coach to make it to the Super Bowl when the Bears won the NFC Championship game in this day in 2007. Tony Dungy joined him later that day when the Colts won the AFC Championship. In 2009, the New Jersey Institute of Technology, they ended their 51-game losing streak. They beat Bryant 61-51. That's when you look at if I am the athletic director at Bryant, I look at the basketball program and go, we're just going to stop now. We just got beat by a team with a 51-game losing streak. 2010 on this day, Lakers guard Kobe Bryant becomes a 15th player in NBA history to reach 25,000 points and the youngest to hit the milestone. Also on this day, in 2019, Golden State guard Klay Thompson sets an NBA record by making his first 10 attempts from three-point range. Warriors beat the Lakers 131-11. Thompson scored 44. Klay Thompson's a Hall of Famer. Everybody talks about Steph Curry, and Steph Curry's phenomenal, obviously. But Klay Thompson's also a Hall of Famer before it's all said and done. Just a three-point marksman, heck of a defender, part of a dynasty in Golden State. Yeah, Klay Thompson it won't take long to get Klay Thompson in the Hall of Fame. And on this day in 2024, Tara Vandermeer, the women's head coach at Stanford, becomes the winningest college basketball coach with her 1,203rd victory. Of course, Gino Auriemma has passed that here recently. So that is the greatest day in the history of the world. January 21st. All right, so post-game shows coming up here in just a couple minutes. We'll have Elijah Campbell come in and we'll do the handoff, sponsored by Little Pigs and Alpine. That is coming up next. We'll also have our Firehouse Sub text the hour at 803-404-6100 on the way as well. Man, what a day. A lot of stuff. Busy weekend. But the important thing is I found out in 1972 a flamethrower would cost you $6.98, Dave. A thing that can catch almost, you name it, this piece of equipment can catch it on fire. It costs you $7.
Good deal.
And it was reduced again, originally $9.98. Now, many heavy kerosene burners can cost as much as $40, Dave, back in 1972. My favorite thing is they have like, and this is advertising back in the 70s. They have this woman, she's a housewife. She's outside. She's in her really cool sweater. She's got her, cap on because it has been snowing. And she's got the flamethrower cooking. Anyway.
I'm sure Black Seal SC, our sponsor, I'm sure they would say don't do that if you have an asphalt driveway.
All right, so we'll get our handoff from Little Pigs on Alpine with Elijah Campbell and also get you the Firehouse Sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100 as well. It is a halftime show. Terry Ford, David Ayer, rolling until 3 here on the game.
before we close down.
All right, get our Firehouse Sub Taxi Hour. Also, our handoff sponsored by Little Pigs at Alpine Road. Our buddy Elijah Campbell hanging out with us. Text of the hour. Let me see here. Waiting to see the ratings numbers from last night. This was the first national championship game I didn't watch in decades. Only prior misses were while deployed in the military. Interesting. I'm trying to see why.
Say, does he have an explanation as to why they didn't watch last night's game?
Did not have an explanation. It's a thing, man, and we've seen this. There's certain sports where tradition, whether it's logical or not, is a thing. Baseball does it, where sometimes we shake our head. Hockey does it at times where we shake our head. And when it comes to college football, it's there too, right? College basketball doesn't have the same level, right? There are people like me. I don't want to see the tournament expand past 64 because I know it's just a bunch of mediocre Power 4 schools that are going to get in.
That couldn't beat teams in their own conference.
Exactly. Yeah. But the NCAA tournament, when it expands, okay, we get a little annoyed and then we get back to filling out our bracket, right?
Right.
Baseball, people want to burn stuff down. When you put a pitch clock in, the world ended, right? The DH, not whatever, DH, not DH. Oh, geez. College football is like that, too. Mm-hmm. You expand playoffs where you give more teams access to the championship tournament, which keeps more programs invested. Like, think about what it was like here at South Carolina down the stretch.
Very invested. You had very meaningful games, more meaningful than they already would have been without a 12-team playoff.
And so you get more college football to watch, and it's playoff games and all this cool stuff. And there are people who hate it.
I don't understand that.
There are people who want to go back.
I really don't.
They want to go back to when you voted, like the coaches and the AP writers would, or UPI would vote for a champion.
Which is so dumb in retrospect.
There are people who just don't like this. And I'm just like, okay, everybody's got their own opinion. I'm not going to argue people with their opinion. Their opinion's their opinion. Me personally, I love it. I don't know about you.
I loved it. Yeah. My only gripe is that, the season ended on January 20th. How about we start the season a week earlier, we end a week earlier, and you're not competing with the NFL playoffs?
See, I like that. I think the seeding has to get fixed. I like your idea there. Tweak the schedule a little bit where you're not running into NFL games because you lose that battle every time. There are things that need to be, maneuvered because eventually this is going to be a 16-team tournament. I mean, we all know that's just at some point.
It's barreling that way.
But there are people, I can't stand it. It's too long. I can't stand this. I can't. I see Notre Dame and Ohio State in the old system wouldn't even have been in. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, because that Ohio State team is legitimately a national title team. That team is legit that good.
Let me ask you, that team, and I've had people throw this comparison, that team, and they had to go on a 4-game dominant run, but they were dominant, and there's some people comparing it to like the LSU run with Burrow or the Bama run during COVID where you looked at this Ohio State team and you're like, you got no hope. You can't beat them. And really, I feel like, and no one said it, and look, I'm not taking away from what Notre Dame did. They gutted their way back in that game. God love them.
They clawed, yeah.
But don't you think Ohio State kind of...
that 8.5 number.
Do you think they were, after they got up 31-7, they were looking for the Gatorade on the sideline?
Absolutely. I mean, like, offensively, I felt like the times they were stopped was when Will Howard missed a throw, right?
We had that touchdown. The touchdown, was it Tate wide open?
Carnell Tate, yeah, and he just missed him.
That was his worst throw of the night.
Yeah, and that was a guy who had a Phil Simms in the Super Bowl start to that game where he completed his first 14 passes.
Yeah,
and
he
broke
completed over 80% of his passes in the college football playoff.
Insane. That kid also needs to get his props as well because people took a dump on him after that Michigan loss. That entire team, people quit on after the Michigan loss, and I didn't know if they'd bounce back from that because of how humiliating it was. But for that kid to complete 80% of his passes and to finally kind of get that light switch clicked or flipped on to where it's like, hey, The passing game can get going because we have the best wide receiver in the entire bleeping sport on this side of the field. 2 other really good receivers on this side of the field. A 6'5", 6'6" tight end with freakish athleticism. We can expand the passing game a little bit and also still be able to find carries for the 2 major athletes you have in the backfield. Like there was a sudden realization of, hey, we throw the ball a little bit, we diversify our looks, we can be a hard team to stop.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where, sometimes a loss gets you back in your head. And Ransom, the safety, they've been there for 10 years at Ohio State. By the way, Ransom
a couple
Downs,
of those guys I feel like have been there for 10 years.
That defense, they're all getting law degrees.
Jack Sawyer,
JTT had been there forever.
Tenure.
Oh, yeah. But Ransom got up after the Michigan game. They had all been kind of like, bumbling around, ho-humming, woe is me, and he